What's up, YouTube? Lee and Andre here from Card Games United for another episode of the As Yet Unnamed podcast. Today's topic is a review for V Extra Booster 1 Destructive Roar.
And it is an interesting one indeed. I think all three clans coming from this extra booster are kind of unique in their own playstyle. A lot of people thought that Mega Colony would struggle a little bit.
That is actually a very interesting topic to start out with, because this set actually changed a lot of these clans' playstyles very much.
Tachikaze.
I think actually all three decks that were in the set had their playstyle shifted. Spike Brothers possibly not as much, but the interesting thing is I think they shifted each playstyle for a different reason. I think with Spike Brothers they thought it would be too good with Force to just have it be like call.
Then kind of like a multi-attack deck like old G Spike Brothers with Rising Nova.
Yeah, because that was always Spike Brothers' playstyle. You'd put stuff back, then you'd call stuff out where it had been, and if you could do that on a Force Circle, as some people are seeing in Premium, it's actually really strong.
Mm-hmm. As we saw with like the Blaster Blade restand and whatnot. Like, yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous if Force clans had multi-attack.
So they tried to dial that back a bit and focused more on just regular Superior Calling and a little bit of power and things like that.
And then it's just like, you have Tachikaze with like the equip gauge. I mean, they still rely on retiring their own units for certain things, but like... the reason why Tachis are doing so well in Japan right now is because those equip gauges are good for letting them actually generate some hand size, resource recharging, and whatnot.
Although we will have to get back to that topic. I think the reason that they shifted Tachi a little bit was to try and give them some unique flavor, because a lot of the falling down point throughout the G series for Tachikaze was that people were looking at this deck and they're like, why would I want to play this when I could just go get a Shadow Paladin deck? And it would be better. There were some points at which Tachikaze was stronger, and a lot of points at which they were weaker, but overall, when you looked at those two decks, there really wasn't a lot to differentiate them.
That's actually one thing I think I like that Bushiroad is doing, is that they're sort of now distinguishing between a lot of clans that had similar playstyles, like as we see with Aqua Force and Nova Grappler. A lot of the, I think, differentiation between, well, I guess that can be for the next podcast, but in short, Bushiroad is making a lot, I think, of effort in sort of differentiating a lot of clans that previously had a very similar playstyle. Like, we know that Tachikaze used to retire their own things, but now they have this gimmick, this really actually fun gimmick, where they can call Tars from the top of their deck and put them underneath the rear guards, and, you know, sort of have that differentiate them from Shadow Paladins, who just straight up retire their rear guards for the Vanguard to gain some effect or something.
Well, we haven't seen what Shadow Paladins is going to do this season quite yet, so they may have some surprises in store for us, but overall
the Blaster Dark reveal was interesting.
They added the equip gauge, and they made it an Excel clan, so there should be a lot to differentiate them, even if they don't throw some additional fun stuff to Shadow Paladins.
Tachis are an interesting, I think, Excel clan in terms of their playstyle, and it's much different from the way that Novas and Aquas would go. Like, for example, do you run front triggers in Tachikaze when I think they would be more of like an 8-crit 4-draw clan?
It's interesting because I've thought of doing 6-crit 6 front and just running grade 1 PGs, because you will deck out pretty fast in that deck because you're shoveling cards off the top of your deck to put them under your cards.
That is actually, I think, one of the concerns I've heard about Tachikaze, as to while they can definitely get a lot of power and certainly maintain good hand advantage, just that decking out is a bit of an issue. But I assume if you're on Gigarex anyways, he'll just put you up to 5 anyway, like no matter what you do. And then by that point, I think they're pretty good at just like pushing for game there.
They did at least have the foresight to change the Gigarex ruling so he doesn't have to drain 6 cards off your deck every turn. So,
or else that'd be a little bit insane, actually.
Yeah, else you'd be decking out every game.
I guess we should review each clan and talk about where they would be in the meta, considering Q4.
We should finish off the 3 in terms of how they've changed.
Yeah, we didn't do Mega Colony.
Right. We didn't do Mega Colony.
So I guess I would preface starting the discussion on Mega Colony as being like, I guess Solemn Vanguard released this video, and I love Solemn Vanguard for his analysis, but I think he was wrong on Mega Colony where he said it was a tier 3 clan. From the results that we've seen in Japan, they're actually, I think, the 4th best clan in terms of tops, only trailing behind Tachikaze, Kagero, and OTT. This was before Champions of Asia released, so we don't quite know the...
Well, from the results I've seen, as soon as Champions of Asia released, it did decrease a little bit. But we'll talk about that more in the meta section. We should talk about Mega Colony's new playstyle, because they have nothing that stuns now. Which...
Oh, well, that kind of... They have that one card, I think, that, like...
Oh, that one card that stuns the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't run it. Anyway, so they have one card that stuns.
They have that card that control your opponent. The one that, like, switches their positions and stuff like that.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that most of the cards revolve around manipulating the state of your own cards. So you can rest your cards, and then you can stand them, and you can call them at rest and things like that.
They definitely did hark back, I think, to the old machining playstyle of just, like, resting your rear guards and gaining effects off being able to stand them again during the main phase.
They did. The only problem in it for me was that it does end up as being very vanilla a lot of the time. A lot of important cards in that deck just sort of gain power, and that's about what they do.
It definitely seems that one thing about their identity is that they can definitely search for grade 3s better than any other clan, even Royal Paladins.
Which is good in a Protect clan, because those grade 3s...
Yeah, especially I think when the Ant's going to be your finisher anyways. Which, the Ant is an interesting card, by the way, as well, with the way that it's designed.
Yeah... I worry a little bit about the Ant, but...
At first it just seemed like a worse version of Draconic Waterfall, because you have to also, I think, discard 2 for its effect, but it does work on the rearguard circle, so I guess there's some trade-off with that, but... I don't know, I think one of the issues I did hear about Mega Colony was that they do have a bit of an issue, I think, pushing for game, and probably because the Ant is such a ridiculous card to actually pay its cost might be one of the issues with that. But you would think that being boosted by Phantom Black, it would be a pretty devastating combo nonetheless.
Don't he and Phantom Black cover the same grade?
I think the Ant covers Sentinels, and I think Phantom Black says that you can't guard with normal units. So if you have
that's 3 cards, and once you've already stopped the Sentinels, they're not likely to be able to guard it with normal units anyway, because he does get the +10.
It's I think it's a very devastating finisher, but again, it's very difficult, I think, to pay for the cost. And if you do fail, I think, on that, since it is a discard 2, you could be in a bad spot, I think, for surviving next turn.
And that is why there is a lot of difficulty in playing around it just being so vanilla.
Machining Hercules, though, is an interesting card.
Machining Hercules.
I think it's the VR.
The VR.
I think it's
counterbalance. Oh, Spark Hercules, right.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, we'll probably cover later. I think it's about time we move on to what we've been looking forward to in the form of meta discussion. So, as far as I've seen from Japanese results, the 2 big decks to watch out for after the set drops are Spike Brothers and Tachikaze.
Yeah.
With Mega Colony being present, but I think a lot of the Mega Colony results tended to drop off as they stopped being like a new interesting deck. So
I think they have their good matchups, but I think they also have their ways to be played around. I think Mega Colony will do well against something like Royal Paladins, Nova Grappler, and Aquaforce. They might be able to give Tachikaze a little bit, maybe, of just, like...
irritation?
Yeah, it'll be very annoying, I think, for Tachikaze to have to go up against them, but I still think that Tachis would still have the advantage just because they can do such a good job of just sort of recharging the resources, and you can basically just call over the cards that lose power from Machining Hercules, whereas other decks might struggle to do that because they don't generate as much resources as Tachikaze does.
Well... I think the big issue with Mega Colony is probably that just in being so vanilla, it's very easy to prepare for. Because, like, what does the deck do? Well, it mostly hits for power, and it has a little bit of a nerfing effect. When you compare that to something like OTT that can hit for consistently powerful columns, has a big finishing turn, draws a ton of cards, and just can PG for days, why are you picking Mega Colony when they're both the Protect clans?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I think that Mega Colony would have an advantage over OTTs, like, I guess the Ant being able to restrict Sentinels, which I guess is OTT's big selling point, but it's just like you said, still, OTT has just so many bigger advantages over Mega Colony. It's like, why would you play that? And OTT is probably one of those clans too that won't actually care about just like calling over units that were like to have their power decreased.
Because last I checked, even after Asia Champions released, no one's pushing OTT from top meta.
No, I think OTT and Kagura are still the two best decks in the format as of right now, with Tachikaze a little bit up there.
I've heard Tachikaze making some waves. I've heard Spike Brothers trying to push in. I've heard Dimension Police, interestingly.
I think even Aquaforce is getting up there too.
I'd be interested to see some Aquaforce topping because I'm not sure what the list ended up being for that, but that's a subject for another video. So, if we get back to the place in the meta, we have to discuss what we think is going to happen with Tachikaze, because as we know, it was like borderline tier 1, tier 1.5 in Japanese, but we have the English pushing misprints. So that means it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to keep up their possession while also applying aggressive pressure. Mm-hmm. So is the fact that we have to pick one or the other in the English meta going to affect the clan's position? Is it going to knock it down to tier 2? Is it still going to be able to make tier 1.5, tier 1?
I think once we get Champions of Asia, they might be in a little more of a difficult position, but I think in the period of time where we just have Destructive War, I think they'll be fine, to be honest. I still think they'll be maybe fighting for Spike Brothers as being the best clan to come out of this booster, but they're definitely better than Royals and Mega Colony and Nova Grappler. Everyone's better than Nova Grappler.
The whipping boys of the series.
So, like, Tachikaze, I think, will be a viable deck coming out of the Destructive War if you wanted to play standard competitively, but, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the Aquaforce matchup will be as to what will be the best Excel clan, because we all know that Novas are never going to get that title.
hey, they have that title right now.
I think if the results see that Tachikaze struggles against Aquaforce, I think they'll be in a little bit of a worse position. And I think some of the early proxying testing I've seen by some players, Aquaforce, I think, has the slight advantage at usually about a 58 to 60% win ratio against Tachikaze. But again, you probably have to consider that those stats need to be taken with a grain of salt.
Stats like that kind of always need to be taken with a grain of salt just because of how card games work. But
yeah. Well, like, the sample size was also 10 I saw from this person.
Well, yeah.
He said he eliminated all games where, like...
Therein.
He said he eliminated all games where, like, the opponent got grade stuck or something like that, but, like, the sample size, I think, needs to be a little bit bigger.
Also, if you'll permit me a slight rant, because I had this argument with people that used to come from V-Mundi back in the days, and it's just so infuriating, because you can't apply statistical analysis like that to card matches, because it's just too randomized. And for a start, it's too randomized, because just think about a deck of cards. There are more ways to arrange a deck of cards than there are molecules in the known universe. You can't consistently guarantee that you're going to have a realistic representation of both decks. And then you open yourself up to the response bias that, of course, you want one or the other deck to win. And you are, by nature, going to have to run the same variant of both decks. Without the tiny differences in tech and playstyle that occur from the numerous different players out there trying to make the deck work the way they want it to. I just hate that sort of like, no, we can guarantee this deck wins 60% of time mindset, because it's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be fine. Maybe
yeah,
I think they'll be the third best deck in the Destructive War meta leading up to Asia Booster.
Because in reality, the cards it affects most would be like Deathrex, right? Because there aren't a lot of other things. I think Megarex also retires on battle, but he doesn't have a modular effect based on the Equip gauge is under the thing, I don't think. Does he? Let me check. uh, so you can still play with like the Savage King and Gigarex, and they still basically function the same way they would.
I think a lot of the deck lists have been playing like 9 grade 3s. I think it's been like 4 Gigarex, like 3 Deathrex, and 2 Savage King. Just because I think Savage King is the one that I think can switch the equip gauges around, if I'm not mistaken.
Savage King can switch the equip gauges around and gets power for his equip gauges. So the idea is that you have Gigarex and Savage King as your aggressive presence on board, and then you have the Blytops and the Grade 1 version for maintaining your card possession. As we've said, that combo is going to work a little less well in the English meta. I think Tachikaze should still be strong just because they're the first really viable
Excel clan.
Because
Novas are trash.
Because Novas are bad. So I guess we should talk about where Spike Brothers falls in the meta.
It pisses me off that Spike Brothers would just do what Royal Paladins do, except just better. So it kind of just like gives way to power creep.
In fairness, they don't have what's her name?
Akane.
Holy Saber.
Oh.
That's her name, right?
Oh yeah, Soul Saber.
Soul Saber, there it is. Yeah, they don't have a Soul Saber or any other equivalent, so they really have to rely on combos to get the real finishing turn in there, which means, as with any other combo deck, you're going to be a little more vulnerable to RNG. So there is that working against them.
I think we also need to give an honorable mention to how difficult the Kagero matchup will be for them, just because a lot of their things need to be present on the board at the beginning of the main phase. So when Kagero is retiring about maybe 2 to 3 units per turn, they will have a little bit of...
And if it's difficult to keep up your card possession, it's
it'll be a little bit difficult, I think, for Spike Brothers to beat Kagero, which is why Kagero, I think, will still be a very strong deck, even after Destructive War drops. But I think Spike Brothers definitely have...
It's interesting because they haven't really released another control deck since Kagero came out.
Which... I guess Mega Colony could still possibly maybe qualify as one.
But they don't, though, because they don't stun.
Yeah, it's just like Mega Colony doesn't really have much of, I think, it's struggling to really figure out its identity right now.
It's just a very standard aggro deck, which... Yeah, but... I mean, why isn't there any control?
Maybe it's because I think maybe it's because Bushi's a little bit afraid of like what Control possibly did back in G format. But
Control didn't do that back in G format. Over aggressive decks did that back in G format, and then they had to balance Control against that, which led to a spiral because no one ever told them what tempo was. Anyway,
Spike Brothers I think will be the 4th best deck in the format. Better than Mega Colony, Novas, and Royals, but probably going to struggle. Definitely going to struggle against Kagero. The OTT matchup seems like it would be a bit of a difficult proposition as well.
Yeah. Just the case with all these decks in the meta seems to be that it's always going to struggle against OTT just because OTT has so much that it brings to the table. Which...
That deck, oh god, I hate that deck.
I love it so much.
It's too good for this early in Standard.
I'm sure Bushi is cooking something up back in the lab to take it down, specifically. Which will be rather annoying. But... So, I guess it's time to just touch on a few of the key cards. And just sort of give like a little bit of a rating for them, that kind of thing.
Out of 5.
Sure, why not? So, Gigarex is the first VR. Can give you a gauge on all your rear guards. Gets 5k for each of your rear guards. Can deal a damage and give 5k to 3 front row rear guards.
Oh, it also gives you an Excel circle you have to mention.
Oh, and also gives you an Excel circle, of course.
On ride.
So, I just love how much better this is than Gigarex. Because, wow, what a 180 for a card to do.
So this thing basically makes itself big and makes your whole front row intimidating.
He makes himself massive on just about every turn, assuming you keep calling rear guards, which is a pretty impressive advantage to just have him as a vanguard. He also allows you to really manage your clip gauges, provides power, guarantees your opponents at 5. Honestly, I can't see anything wrong with this card, other than it's a little bit of a drain on the deck. So if I had to give it a rating out of 5, I'd give it like a 4 or a 4.5.
I think it's up there too. I think it's probably the best VR we have, certainly, and it's probably the best card we have in the set, actually.
Is honestly hilarious because, like I said, Gigarex went from being the de facto worst triple R to one of the best VRs. What a difference 5 years makes.
The card's threatening. I'm going to be expecting to see this VR pop up a lot in the meta. I'm going to be expecting to face a lot of Tachikaze decks. And it's not going to be fun as they can just sort of... They're a very good tempo clan in that they can sort of play like this weird control style where they can just call rear guards in their cell circles, swing at your rear guards, and then just ping you. So it's like they're getting a little bit of board control in, and then Gigarex is just like, I feel like dealing you a damage after I've done all that.
So the next card we have to talk about is General Seyfried.
It's a decent card.
So I do like the act to search for your deck because
deck thinning,
B, soul charging, C, power, D, managing on hit effects or on call effects. There's a lot that goes into that package. The only thing that sort of worries me about him is that the second effect is an on hit, but in a force clan, the ability to stand one of your rear guards could be really powerful and really does just guarantee that your opponent cannot let your vanguard hit.
Especially, I think, with how big they are. I mean, I guess it is Spike Brothers multi-attack is the potential that just, like, General Siegfried there can stand one of those rear guards up. And also gets to retire as well, so...
So yeah, if this thing hits, it's an absolute monster. The issue is you have to get it to hit, which is hard.
It kind of reminds me a lot of Maelstrom, in that it's a card that I think has a lot of pressure, just because of the presence and the potential of that on-hit to happen. Again, it'll depend a lot on the opponent, like as to whether or not they value that restand. But, you know, just being a Vanguard and having a double, like a twin drive.
I kind of think that's one of the strong points, because they always have to value that restand, right? Because it's a stand.
Yeah, which means
and it's a pop.
People are going to be spending a lot of resources to make it a 2 to pass, because, again, it's a Vanguard. It's going to have a twin drive, so you can't just guard for the minimum amount of the numbers.
The only problem is that in the age of Protect clans, you cannot guarantee that your opponent doesn't have a PG, because a lot of them just will always have a PG. And of course, I think that's one of Spike Brothers' stronger points, because it does like to say, hey, you kind of have to use these PGs on my rear guards.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be 2 cards gone from there. That's going to be 2 cards gone from the opponent's hand.
If I had to give that one a rating, I'd say
3.7.
God damn, we're just subdividing this into all. Okay, great. 3.7.
I don't think it's a game-changing card like Gigarex, but it is a good card nonetheless.
Right. Next up, we have Machining Spark Hercules. Choose 5 of your rear guards, stand them, so helps you manage some of those rest effects. Really, the only big one in standard format is Stag Beetle, which okay. Then they all get 5k. And choose all your opponent's units, rest them, because that matters now? Question mark. And they get minus 5k until the end of the opponent's next turn. So, power nerfing. It's back. Huzzah!
It's interesting. It's not. I don't think it's terrible. I mean, I think Counterblast 2 is a little bit of a hefty cost, but Mega Colony
is one of the bigger issues.
Mega Colony, I think, does do a pretty good job of countercharging. That it might not be as bad as, say, like Perfect Riser, the other CB2 VR.
Yeah, they did get more efficient, I think.
It just seems like the old problem with, like, machinings from back in the day where, like, you minus everything 5, but then the opponent can just ride and then just call over, I guess.
That has been sort of the bane of Mega Colony's existence for a while. But
yeah, it's just...
What do you do if your opponent just rides? What do you do if the game automatically incentivizes your opponent to keep riding? Because that's the weird thing about Mega Colony's design. It's always incentivizing something that the game already incentivizes.
I mean, I guess calling over the units might not be that big of a deal, but
because we started stunning vanguards back during the break ride era, and did you want to re-ride during the break ride era? Absolutely. You wanted to get your break ride effect off.
And now you want to re-ride.
During, like, the beginning of G-Series, it was more...
It was obnoxious because you wanted to have those grade 3s to discard for stride.
Right. And now it's just back to being like, well, I was going to re-ride anyway because I want these gifts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a whole argument about if I stun your whole field and you have to spend a lot of cards, you know, retiring over these things, it's kind of just like, well...
The problem is I don't know who cares that much about -5 to their rear guards. Like, sure, Nova Grappler cares, but huzzah, you bullied Nova Grappler. With Royal Paladin, it's like, okay, I just have all these cards that allow me to call cards cheaply. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, they could
with
just
OTT,
maybe...
it's like, okay, my rear guards, oh no.
Aquaforce, but they also gain... They also do a pretty good job of gaining power, though, so... I don't know, like... I think it's obnoxious to Aquaforce.
It's a little bit trying to pick on, like, Excel clans, I guess. Just to sort of press home their issue with resource management. The issue is that, number one, Tachikaze is so good at resource management, and number two, Aquaforce, I could see it being a hassle for, but I don't know, maybe it'll be an issue for Aquaforce, but the idea is when you're sort of hard countering 2 decks in a meta that contains 10, meh. Just meh. So, it can also put a grade 2 or less rearguard into Soul and get 5k for each of your opponent's rested units. So, it swings big. That's nice. Charge a Soul. That's nice.
I don't know, this card, I mean...
I would honestly have to, if I wanted to grade it, I'd have to give it like a 2.5, just because so much of it is...
I think it's a 3. I don't think it's an awful card.
Well, it's not awful, but it's also not, like, that good. So it sort of falls just right and smack in the middle. Because, like, meh. It's just meh. It's not bad. It's not good. It's meh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think there's also a lot of ways to play around it, too, because, like, if you know if that Spark Hercules turn is coming, then do you really want to commit that board and just have them open themselves up to get a -5? Which is, I think, why Aquaforce could play around it a little bit, just because I think, unlike Nova Grapplers, they can do a little more with less rear guards, because they're all self-freestanders, whereas Nova Grapplers, like, you have to drop your whole hand.
Just your Vanguard freestand stuff.
Yeah, you have to drop your hand to make something happen here.
Also, with Nova Grapplers, you always need that specific board state, or else...
Yeah.
Because, like, if your opponent minuses 5 to your, what's his name? Like, Razor, the red one.
Perfect Riser?
No, the restandy one.
Burst Riser?
Burst Riser. If they -5 to your Burst Riser and you're like Battle Lore Fighters, how are you going to replace those cards? Because what else do you have that can serve as a viable substitute for those cards on board? Whereas, other than just like other copies of those cards.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I guess they could maybe kind of bully Spike Brothers, but then they would just put the things back in the Soul anyways at the beginning of the turn. So yeah. That's going to be a very difficult matchup for Mega Colony.
Plus, they have Force Gifts, so it's like -5, okay, +10.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess
have made this super big attack slightly smaller.
I guess I'll give Mega Colony its due credit that, like, there is the Ant Phantom Black combo, but that's kind of really all they have going for them.
I don't think the Ant Phantom Black combo is actually a combo. I think the idea of discarding 3 cards just to be marginally better than the effect that requires you to discard 2 is kind of a waste of time.
Phantom Black requires a discard.
He does, yes.
Yeah, that's not very consistent. And they say D-Robos have an inconsistent but powerful combo.
Antlion also requires you to Soul Blast a grade 3.
Yep.
So at that point, you're playing Soul Blast a grade 3.
Discard
2. Because don't use it with Phantom Black. That's just a waste of time. At that point, you're playing Soul Blast 1, discard 2. Soul Blast a grade 3, discard 2. And when you compare that to the cost of things like the Deer, which is Soul Blast 2 grade 3s and discard 1 in a deck where you have a card designed to put your grade 3s in Soul, and you have in Kagero Waterfall, who is Soul Blast 1 grade 3, in a deck that is designed to just shovel power onto your Vanguard. For God's sakes, this thing isn't even in a Force Clan, so you can't power it up. It's just going to be sitting there like, do you have a trigger in your hand? You do? Okay, I wasted my turn. And 2 cards. Yay!
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't think I'm going to be running Antlion in the first place. I think the big cash for Mega Colony right now is that it just has a lot of fairly efficient cards.
You certainly won't worry about having a G-Assist for a grade 3 with like just how well they can search out their grade 3s.
That is true.
They have that going for them.
They also have the advantage that Stag Beetle now works on Rearguard, which is nice. I've heard that in premium format they work really well with Geese, just because there's a lot of combos you can make. Mostly involving just drawing a ton of cards.
But who plays premium anymore?
Good question. Yeah, so you have things like Spiteful Hopper and Bloody Hercules that just recharge your resources, and they're just generally good. Other than that, I don't know what to say. They're kind of vanilla.
They need help.
I wish they'd let us stun things.
Some of the things was actually fun.
Yeah, plus, like, they complained about it not being good, but
this is worse.
You could make it good. So, that's really all I can say. Only other interesting topic I can think of for this set is that it doesn't seem to have like a de facto budget deck, which the other sets in V-Series seem to have strived to do, because there aren't like a lot of rare bosses unless you want to count Savage King.
I think even they'd be pretty hard pressed to build like a decent Tachikaze deck off just Savage King.
Mm-hmm.
Like at least the Nova Grappler Hero deck was somewhat of a, I don't know how viable I was.
The advantage the Nova Grappler Hero deck had was that it was somewhat viable and you could build it entirely off commons and rares. Like, I think the closest thing to a budget deck this has is if you wanted to build a full deck off Unite Attacker, and that's a double R. And even then, like, your backup is Frontline Commander Siegwald, which, yay.
Very expensive set. It's going to be a very expensive set, I think, if you want to build something out of this. So, I don't know. I mean, some of the prices I've seen, I think the highest is Tachikaze. That's been like about 180.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you are in a TCG, you're probably used to spending those totals anyways. And 180, I think, for a very good deck competitively is not bad. And so Spike Brothers are as good as they are. If you can build that for a 125, that's also very good.
Alright, so, end of the day, if we had to rate the set out of 100, I think I'd probably give it a strong, like, 85.
Yeah, around maybe an 80 or an 85.
Because a lot of these decks do look very interesting. They did manage to be, like, decent to good. And I love all three of these clans, so it's like, this one hits a lot of soft spots for me. I'll give it a high grade.
I think the only thing it probably loses is maybe its lack of budget options, but,
yeah.
you know, at the same time...
You have to dock a few points for lack of budget options. You also have to dock, like, a couple points for not introducing anything to compete with top meta. But other than that, it does a lot of things very well.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Well, on to the next set, I guess.
On to the next set.